In this video, it's going to be the first of our input device video, and we're going to be looking at keyboards and mice. Alright, so we're just going to be looking at what they are, what it is we use them for, and how they work. So this is what Cambridge says you need to know for this part of the course, and it's basically gives you a list of input devices and output devices, and you need to say where they're used, how they're used, and how they work. So we're going to have a video on each device that they say. Okay then. So first of all, let's have a look at what is actually an input device. I'm sure you've got a basic idea by now, but let's just have a look at it in a little bit close detail. All right. So data is held in a computer in a digital form. Right, we know this. We've got ones and zeros. It's binary. That's how computers see things. All right. When data is input into a computer, we see it as, if we use a keyboard, for example, we see the A, the B, the C. So in our minds, we're inputting A, B, C. Okay. Now, this data is converted into the digital form. Right, now, this is what an input device essentially does. Okay, so it's just a piece of equipment that turns data into electronic signals. Now, we need it to do this because we're not going to sit there writing ones and zeros when we just want to write A, B, or C. So they are very, very important, even though we do tend to take them for granted. Now, they can be wireless or wired. Okay, it doesn't matter which type. So they can also be what we call manual or automatic, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds. A manual input device is where the user has to do it by hand, and an automatic input device is where the computer does it for you. So we're going to be looking at two manual data types today, like we just said, and we're going to start off looking at the keyboard. Okay, so first of all, what is it, or what type of data does it input? Well, it inputs text characters. We use it for numbers too, but basically we're inputting the characters that are on the keypad. It is manual, like I said before. We have to do it ourselves. If we're doing speech and it's typing out through speech, remember we're not using the keyboard. Okay, so it is a manual type. So this is how it works. Every key, right, so if I draw kind of a side-on view, if you imagine this as a key, right, and then you have the keyboard underneath it, right, every time you press this key down, it closes an electronic circuit. All right, now every single key has its own binary representation, has its own binary number. So when you press the letter A, it has the binary version for A in there. So 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. Went too many there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. So that inside of the key E, it has that assigned to it. So when you press the A down, it touches the bottom and forms a circuit, and then the value of this circuit can be sent to the processor. Okay. Now, once the processor gets it, it looks it up in the ASCII or Unicode table and figures out, yes, that is the letter A, and then you can see the letter A on the keyboard. All right. So this is basically what it is. It's definitely one of the most simple types of input device you're going to be looking at, and probably one of the easier to remember. Okay, but it does have a slight complicated side to it, as the fact you can use multiple keys. Okay, so when you use keys together, you can do different things. So the example I've got here is when you press Control, Alt, and Delete, you can open up your task manager, or you can choose to restart your computer. Okay, so those keys together will form a binary signal to tell the computer to open up the task manager, for example. Okay, so it's not just as simple as just one key at a time. But essentially, they're all working the same way. We are just completing a circuit so that signal can be sent to the processor. Okay, so the next one, the mouse. The mouse controls positional data. Yes, you can click it and it sends the clicks to what you're clicking on, but the vast majority of the time you're moving a mouse around. And if I use my pen here, you can see it's the positional data moving. Okay, now it is manual because you're moving it yourself. And this is how it works. So if you imagine this is the bottom of your mouse, and it has a light that shines down. Now inside the mouse there is a lens. Okay, and it works on the principle that the light shines down, it bounces off the surface and the light goes back up into the lens, and then the binary, it converts it to binary and sends it to the processor, and the processor logs that as movement as it's sending. And remember, it's doing that a lot. Right? The processor is doing billions of things a second. You can imagine how many times your mouse is sending a signal to the processor to say that it's moved. Okay, so that's how the mouse works. Remember, light shining out of the mouse, hits the surface that you're on, bounces back off the surface into the lens inside of the mouse, and the digital signal is sent to the processor. The processor will convert and check to see if the mouse has moved. There are other devices that we can use for mice. Right? Number one, we have a trackball that you can move with your thumb. Okay, often used by people who don't really find moving a mouse around very comfortable. Okay, we have a trackpad on a laptop, and this is mainly for when people don't want to plug mice into their laptop because they're moving on the go or something like that. And you also have a controller on a games console that you can move around. I'm sure you've all did it before when you're on the stores and things, and or if you go on the browser on your Xbox or your PlayStation, you can use the controller to move the keyboard or the cursor on the thing, and then use the buttons to click. Alright, now there is advantages and disadvantages to manual inputting of data, like everything in computer science, and these are some of them. Okay, so number one, a mouse and a keyboard are easy and familiar to use. You've been using them for a long time. They've been around almost as long as computers have, and we all know how to use them. And even if you don't, they're very simple to get the hang of. Number two, they're often provided at no extra cost when you buy a computer. And obviously if you buy a laptop, they're definitely provided because they're inside of the laptop. And number three, they're very useful. Alright, they're useful for a wide range of tasks. Most things you do, you're going to use a keyboard and a mouse to do, and they're very convenient. But there are some disadvantages. Manual is slower than automatic. Alright, that's always going to be the case. A human can only type so fast. And number two, humans are prone to mistakes no matter how good you are at typing, and no matter how thoroughly in check your work, eventually humans do always make mistakes. Right? And number three, people can get tired of typing. You can get medical conditions like repetitive strain injury in your wrists from typing too much or using a mouse too much, and it can be very, very painful. Okay, so there are disadvantages of using such simple devices. You do need to have a rest. Alright, now that is it for the keyboard and mouse video. Not too difficult, but please watch it again if you need to. There is a reasonable chance that a question on keyboard and mouse or any other input device or output device could come up on your exam. Okay.